Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Harrison. I'm the Executive Director of TN STEP, which houses Tennessee's Parent Training and Information Center. I am also the parent of a now young adult who has multiple disabilities and tons of great abilities.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sampson. I'm the Deputy Director of the Tennessee Disability Coalition. But like Karen and Rebecca, who are on, I'm also a mom. I have twin 2-year-olds, and they are in TEIS right now, about to turn 3 in December, and will likely qualify for our future services. So I'm you, you're me. We're in this together. Should I stay or should I go? I'm still trying to figure it out. Hence the name of this webinar. Enough about me. I'm pleased to introduce Rebecca Aislinger. Will you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Rebecca Aislinger. I'm also a mom of twins. I didn't know that, Sarah, right? Look at that. Karen, you can join the club.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. I am a mom of 4. My last 2 twins, and they are 8. And my son, Everett, has Down syndrome. His fraternal non-identical twin sister, Vivian, does not. So when they were 3, we had a tough choice to make, which we can talk about. Not many people had to make the choice we had at the time we did. I am an assistant professor at Chattanooga State in the early childhood education department, and my husband's also an educator, but this was still a really difficult decision for us with our child. But we made the decision.
You survived.
It was still hard.
Awesome. So one thing I have learned as a mom is I learned so much from hearing from other families. So that's kind of the point of today, right?
Right. So if you're a parent or caregiver whose child is currently receiving Tennessee Early Intervention Services or TEIS and will turn 3 years old on or after October 15th of this year, this video chat might be the very thing you need to help you make a decision or on whether to continue with TEIS services at age 3 called the TEIS extended option or transition to services through your local school system called IDEA Part B services. So we're so excited to share some perspectives with you today from 3 parents who either will be deciding or have already decided and face these decisions about inclusive opportunities in the school system or choosing services in home-based services for their children with disabilities or special health care needs. So first of all, as with most services, there are criteria that you have to meet in order to be able to access those services. And so we just want to share these with you. It's the same with TEIS extended options. And remember, you have to meet all 3 of these. So 1, the child must currently be participating in TEIS and have an active IFSP. The child's 3rd birthday must be on or after October 15th, 2022, and the child must be evaluated and found eligible for Part B public school services.
So to say that for me again, if a child turns 3 like this week or before October 15th of this year, they're not going to be eligible to stay in TEIS.
Right. What they would be eligible for is to be evaluated to see if they qualify for school system services in under Part B.
Okay, so child turns 3 after October 15th of this year, and they are already receiving TEIS, have that active family support plan, and they have been evaluated and found eligible, then they have to make this choice, right?
Should I stay or should I go? Yes.
So we're going to talk about some of the considerations and information gathering. So can you tell us a little about your experience?
Well, for me, it's always been helpful to know the developmental, emotional communication and academic milestones of 3 and 4-year-olds. I only had one child, and so as I was walking through this process, I wanted to know what to expect, and that way I could take a look at what other milestones were for 3 and 4-year-olds.
And where would I find that information?
Well, the way that you can find that is through the Tennessee Early Learning Developmental Standards, and another acronym, 10 ELDS, so Tennessee Early Learning Developmental Standards. And this information just helps us to think about the types of things children with disabilities are learning and doing at these ages and have high expectations for our children. And so kind of gives you a peek ahead so that you can, as a family and as a team, plan what areas do your children need the most intensive focus on, and what services might they need, and supports might they need. So take a look at the 10 ELDS. They're very helpful.
Thank you. Yeah. And, that's something that families in TIS, right, we've kind of already been taught to do, because when we have those meetings and talk about every 6 months or so, how have our children been doing against their goals, and do we need to set new goals? And one of the things I find helpful is, okay, let me think about the types of activities that I want my kids to be able to participate in, and then go from there, right? Social, developmental, academic. And the crazy part is that now they're about to be 3, I have to start thinking about kindergarten, right? So like, what do I want them to be able to do in kindergarten?
Right, that's really important. I think the other piece to consider is what types of supports they will need to participate in those activities that are important to you as a family. So, for some children, they could participate in a Mother's Day Out or a typical preschool curriculum and classroom without a lot of extra supports or minimal supports and accommodations. But some, like my daughter, um, who needed assistance with feeding and toileting and communication and activities, how to access those activities, she needed those supports. And so those types of intensive supports would only be available by choosing the Part B option and having an IEP and having all of those services written into that plan. So
That is super helpful. Can you tell me a little bit more other things to be considering?
well, one of the things that we often hear is a question about therapy services. So, if a child is receiving therapy services through TEIS, like physical therapy, occupational therapy, or speech therapy, those services could continue to be provided at home or at a community based service that you as a parent have selected and enrolled your child in. Services through Part B in an IEP would likely be provided by different therapists. That's always something that is kind of gets to
Nailed
our
it.
heart sometimes and makes us a little nervous, and would likely be provided in a school-based setting. So, a couple of other things to consider is that families can choose to transition to school district services at any time. But once you choose Part B services, you can't return back to TEIS services. So that's another consideration to weigh in all of this. So if you choose to go with extended option at age 3, at age 4, your child might be at a different place, your family at a different place, and you want to then seek services through Part B and an IEP, and that would be perfectly fine. You just can't go back and forth.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. That's a lot of information to take in, but thank you for breaking it down. So I think next we're going to go ahead and dive into those family stories. Um, I want to start with Robin because she's the mom and she brought on her son James to speak with us also. They live in Dickson County and they're awesome. James is 17 now, but he took part in TEIS when he was a wee lad and then transitioned to an inclusive preschool because they had that available. I really wanted Robin to share her story because she is fierce about pre-K being what set James up, even, for success in kindergarten, elementary, and now in high school. She admits that it was scary at the time, but it's a powerful story. It's powerful to see James talk about it. They couldn't be with us here, but they have a video for us. So I'm gonna share that. One moment. Here's James.
Hi, I'm Robin Lampley. This is my son.
My name is James Nelson.
We're just going to take a few minutes and share a little bit about James's experience with preschool 14 years ago. But first, James, can you tell us 3 things about yourself today?
I am 17 years old. I can break dance. I love to run.
You run. Do you run with a team?
Yes.
Who do you run with?
Jackson County Troopers. Cross country.
Cross country. How long are your races?
3.1 miles.
Ooh, 5K. That's awesome. Good job.
Yes.
So thinking about preschool, one of the first things we think about is friends, other students that he was in school with. And we thought of 4 that he knew the best. What were their names? Do you remember?
Trey, Tommy, Martin, and Wiley.
Yeah, these 4 kids he spent a lot of time with. A couple of them had IEPs, a couple did not. And they were just good friends, learned a lot from each other about relationships, and it was a really good part of his experience. And 3 of them are still in school with him today. And so have been a part of his life. But we also were thinking about what did he actually spend his time doing in preschool? So I pulled out like a memory book. We flipped through that. We kind of made a list. We're just going to go back and forth, share some things that James worked on in 3-year-old preschool. He's learning his colors, looking at coloring and painting.
Okay, got a t-shirt.
And matching
Sit in my seat.
and patterns,
Pictures.
and tracing and cutting,
Stand in line.
letters and sounds,
Listening.
numbers.
Follow directions.
What else?
Do my best.
Do your best. That was an important part of it because he certainly wasn't mastering these things, but he was starting the journey. He was starting the education journey, and he was learning and moving forward always to the next thing. Always moving forward to the next learning. You know, you do learn one thing and then you move on to the next. And that was just an important part of the journey, really from them until now. It's just been a straight line of continued education. And he's now a junior in high school. He's working on the alternate academic diploma. And we feel like his years in preschool just kicked all that off. And it was really a good start. He was ready and the timing was right. And so we've always been thankful for that opportunity to begin the journey. And so anything else we need to share?
Nope.
Nope. So we wish you well. And we thank you for letting us share our experience. Thanks.
Bye.
They're the best, right?
Yes.
I wanted to wave to him too, but
Awesome.
it was recording.
Yeah. So, I learned from hearing from James and Robin, and I hope folks on this event did too. Next, Rebecca, would you share a little bit about your story and your journey?
Yes. So I'm in Hamilton County, and I have also been a teacher within the county, and now I'm at the community college teaching early childhood. So I know the entire focus and the importance of early childhood. But when you're a mom and you get a birth diagnosis and you have premature twins in the NICU, you're level playing field, or you're even like at a deficit because you just don't know what to do. At that time, I didn't know about TIS, and it was right before Christmas, and a friend came who had also had a child with Down syndrome, and she was telling me all the great services that TIS had to offer. And I remember her taking a paper towel out of the sink in my hospital room and writing down abbreviations for me. And like, I clung to that paper towel and brought it home and Googled and tried to call these services before my son could even leave the NICU. So he is a NICU graduate after a month. His twin sister was 2 months. So I cannot wait to start services. Because I said I was a teacher and I was married to a teacher, I did not go back to work for 2 years. And it wasn't because we were living in the laps of luxury. It's because we were 2 teachers and we had 3 kids, 2 and under, and a high school senior. So my paycheck didn't catch up with childcare. So I was off for 2 years, and every month I did something scary. That was me. That was my personality. I would go and look at a program for adults with intellectual disabilities. I would call and talk to a mom who has a 26-year-old with the same diagnosis. I would go to a reading story hour with no other children with special needs. I would go and meet and go on a play date in the neighborhood. I knew what to do, like any mom would, but I was also just trying to survive. Therapists would come into the home. I even would beg for more therapy if possible. I looked at the forecast of the snow, and it doesn't snow in Hampton County, and tried to schedule my son's developmental therapist for those days that there was a prediction of snow, just so she could be snowed in with us, because I loved her. So when we did age out of the program, it was devastating, to say the least. I really think it should continue to the age of 8, if anyone's on this call listening, since early childhood is birth to 8, but just letting you know, those are my thoughts. But I knew it too, we had to start looking for 3. I also know the importance of preschool. I did not attend preschool myself. So I make a big deal when all my kids graduate preschool. And I say you're the first generation preschool graduate. It's huge. You're up for success. So I agree to everything that mother said. All of my children with and without disabilities are where they are today because of the early learning they did. And I think that nothing can replace the classroom. So when he was 2, he and his twin sister, I did go back to work, and I love my job. I love my profession. I've been doing it for 19 and a half years. So at that point, the services kind of shifted from home based to preschool based. And we were attending my church's preschool, and it was a great preschool. It was in the basement of a church. You know, it had, my husband had called it that granny would rock you if you needed rocking. You know, there weren't grannies there, but it was that love that you would get in the preschool. And I knew he was academically learning, socially learning, but he was also the only kid there with exceptional needs. He was the only child at 2 when we started going. I was under the impression he couldn't go there, probably from my postmenopausal twin mom brain. And so I looked at other options in the city, and that's when the director at the time I emailed, and she said they absolutely have a place here, because that was the plan all along until birth. And so we made that place fit, and it was absolutely wonderful. The therapists that were coming to the home came to the school. It was private, which means I wrote the check for tuition. And again, there wasn't much money back then. And so that money tried to go far, but I knew that my child needed to be around other kids. And the 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or 4-year-old classroom. So before his 3rd birthday, I started probably a year out, really thinking about where we're going to end up, because I know at 3, the Part B takes over. The school system takes over because you have 3 to 21 years old for your, IDA with IEP. And I started looking around the city. And at that time, our school system had changed a couple of rules. And I don't think those rules are in effect anymore. So no worries about that. But I was trying to find the best place to put him where he would be learning. But I loved our private preschool in the basement of a church. And so I talked to lots of people in Hamilton County. I made lots of phone calls. I wrote lots and lots and lots of emails, and I just wanted all the information in my brain, and I would regurgitate it back to them to make sure I understood it. So they did want to place him in our home zone school at 3 years old. And so I went to tour of the school, and it was a wonderful, beautiful school with amazing teachers. But when I looked at they called it blended, which is inclusion. It was 80% of the day. So in my mind, I thought, why would I go from 100% inclusion to 80% when his world is always going to be 100%? So I made a really tough decision that at 3, we were going to deny services, and we were going to be lone wolves. And I was trying to find every parent I could who had done this, and it was doable, but no one had done it before. So at 3 years old, we went and we did the evaluation, and we went to our PAL center, went to the preschool assessment center, and we met with our whole team from TIS to Hamilton County to go over to create an IEP that we knew that we were going to deny. That day, the meeting was over 3 hours, and then we had to conclude our meeting, and we said, we appreciate all these goals you've written. We think they're amazing to understand my legal rights, but we are going to deny them. We're safe, right? We're going to sign away our free and appropriate education. We are not choosing to go to the school system at 3 years old because that's not the best for him. And I should say that when I toured that school with someone from central office, we toured it. And at the end, we were hugging in the parking lot, exchanging cell phone numbers because I just told her in my heart, if my son can't slide down a slide with his twin sister and me to say that she's the same as him and he's the same as her, who's going to care for him when my husband are gone? So I was really big on these inclusive services. When we signed away faith and we went upstairs in the same building to start the next 3-hour meeting to qualify for private school, which is ISP, Individual Service Plan, we realized that educationally we would be responsible for what he had to know. So then, like Sarah said, we would look at the kindergarten standards and we would reverse back. It was just up to my husband and I, because with the private school, it was just the services and not the education plan. And so he did not change locations. That whole time I wanted TIS to extend. I was even like begging, like, come on till kindergarten, just make it till kindergarten, make it till. So I'm so excited that it's through 4 years old. When I heard this, the first thing in my mouth is, can I get a time machine? Can I go back and can we get this extended year, one more year? But we did end up, doing it privately. And that just means that we wrote our check to the church, and the services were done through a different part of the county, and they still came to a school. We made lots of great friends there and lots of therapists. And then when it was time to go to kindergarten, his twin sister was ready and he was not ready. So we did a victory lap. That's what I called it. We just did a repeat year in preschool. And that was a tough decision as a twin mom to separate them. But at that point, it would be setting him up for failure or holding her back. And then COVID hit, but we won't talk about that. So we really did make the absolute best decision we could. And then we had to re-enter the Part B services at 6 years old. And so we had to go back and re-enter and do the IEP and sign, back into our FAPE, our free and appropriate education that we wanted. So it has been almost like a puzzle piece together. And I don't know if I would recommend the way that I did it, because I'm trying to think of other parents. Some parents have done this since we've done it. It's complicated, it's individually based, but it's doable. But I think it would have been a lot easier if that extended option had been there, because he was still in the classroom and still learning. And the school that my kids go to in Hamilton County is a non-zone school, but the preschool was part of a zoned area, the private one. And so some of those friends that he made in preschool, he's still in Boy Scouts with, or Cub Scouts today. So those preschool friends are still part of his life, but it was preschool through a different service. That's really complicated now that I said all that out loud.
Thank you. It feels like putting pieces of a puzzle together, and it's an individual decision, an individual journey for every family. So it's great to hear your story. Thank you. You made it.
I made it. And he's reading and writing, and he has a grade level. So we're all good.
That's awesome. So families like yours, you would have chosen the extended option because the services available in your area weren't the right fit for your son. And there will be families in Tennessee, same situation, or, of course, different. Every family, every child is different, but some areas don't even have an inclusive pre-K option. And some areas pre-K option starts at age 4. And so it's a puzzle that we're all just piecing together. Thank you so much for sharing. And every time you lift that coffee mug up, let's do this, I get a little pump. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And Karen is also a survivor of the piecing together the pre-K, piecing together early childhood decision making. Karen, will you share your story?
Sure. It's a long story, so I have a few bullet points because I want to keep it brief. But thank you, Rebecca, for sharing your story and just reminding us that the family voice and choice is so important in all of this. And the more information you have, the way you gathered it up, the better decisions you can make for your family. So that's just always good to hear that. My daughter, Sarah, was born with a very rare chromosome translocation, and she's one of 3. that are still alive in the United States that have this same chromosome makeup. So she has a very low immune system, medically fragile, developmental delay, communication delays, and so she was included with peers in our local church from birth to 3, in our community, of course, family gatherings, all of that. And so I always wanted for her to have, when she got to preschool age, to be in a preschool with typical peers. But it was very scary knowing that at the time she turned 3, she was not talking. She couldn't walk. She had a compromised immune system. So a lot of those things might have led me to think of something more sheltered in my home with services coming there. But I had been to TN Step workshops, learned what my rights were under special education, and learned that really the team could build supports in for her. And so I felt like that I could trust that process. And so that's what we ended up doing was opting for Part B services. And then I found out that our county at the time didn't have an inclusive preschool option available, right? So I didn't research enough, I think. And so the recommendation from the IEP team was to put her in a special education preschool classroom, and that was not going to meet her needs. And so I advocated for a community private preschool for part of her day, and a Mother's Day Out for part of her week, and a blended program with a special education preschool for part of her week. So she was all over the place. But the important thing for us was that in those other settings in the community and Mother's Day Out, the school provided through the IEP an assistant to go with her, assistive technology to help her with her communication needs, all of the things that she needed to be supported effectively in those community settings. And so that is a possibility through an IEP and advocacy strategies for her. So the same as Robin, a lot of those children that she met in those opportunities, inclusive settings, she's still friends with today. Would have loved to brought her on, but she would have spent the whole time telling you knock knock jokes because that's her jam, and she knows so many, and she's like a stand-up comedian. So we just knew that from our experience, we wanted her to have that structured setting, get ready for kindergarten. It was going to take all of those years to help teach her some of those skills that she needed. My husband still hasn't mastered the taking turns and staying in line and quiet hands stuff. So don't worry, you don't have to meet every developmental standard to be successful in life. So blended services is where we landed, so that she could start getting those opportunities with her typical peers and with the supports that she needed. I think that the thing that I wanted to really emphasize is that was the right choice for our family, but I love the I in the individualized family service plan and in the I in individualized education program. So you can't go wrong. Either one of those starts with I, and it has to be individualized for the child. So sharing what you know about your child with the team, what works, getting your questions answered, those are all things that are really important. Oh, I think you're muted, Sarah. Right.
Correct. Thank
Okay.
you, Karen.
Okay.
Uh,
I did have a couple other notes to share unless you had a comment first. Was that
hit us.
okay? I just wanted to say that, now I've been in this journey in the field of special education and advocacy and training for families for 26 years or so. And I just wanted to say that assisting families and taking into consideration where we are now with the impact of COVID, all of those things, taking those into consideration as it's impacting every part of our lives. There's a couple things that I thought really shouldn't be the main reason that you choose to stay in TEIS or move to Part B or not, that which way to go. So the first one is the fear of change. And just remembering that every transition for your child from now until forever is going to be scary, right? It's the unknown versus the known, but there's lots of supports available. So think about what supports would your child need in whichever setting you choose. And then the second is you might hear some things about in the school there's staffing shortages and there's related service provider shortages and a lot of things happening right now. But I wouldn't let that be the reason that you don't choose to go with Part B services and inclusive preschool opportunities, because there are protections in place and there are processes in place that STEP and Family Voices and others can help you learn those processes. So those are some things that, if they do arise, there's ways to address them.
Now, I've always said too, Karen, that when I have a parent talking about staffing concerns about her child's school, I was like, that's not your child's job. It's staff the school. Your child's job is to go to the school and they'll get the staff, because sometimes parents do make that decision based off of what they think is available.
Thank you. So we want to be sure and answer questions that we're getting. One top one is, I have learned that doing the research is essential. So I know to go to TN STEP, Karen, and your website are just, oh my gosh, a wealth of information. I know that Family Voices of Tennessee is a great support for especially peer support, but this research, right? So if I wanted to learn what services are available, I know that we would not learn what service plan my child or my children would have until we've already made this decision. But right now, while I'm doing the research, where would I go to learn what is possible in my area?
Well, I would say, first learning your rights and responsibilities so that you know the parameters of what is possible under IDEA and also in Part C or Part B. But I would connect with your special education or your local education agency and ask them, do you have inclusive preschool opportunities in this county or in my district? And what would be my zoned school? Right? Where would my children go if they did not have disabilities? And can I observe that program? And you can contact STEP. We have a really neat tool, or we can distribute that out on a checklist for observing a program, because you might not know what you're looking for. But if you have a child with mobility needs, you might want to see how would that class need to be configured to take into consideration their mobility needs, and how many, you could ask questions about what's your typical staffing, child and teacher ratio, and what are your hours, and just knowing that if you choose Part B, you don't have to go all day every day, right? It can be based on your child's needs.
Awesome. So I'm going to roll back. You said special education supervisors, local education agencies. Where do I find that contact information?
It should be on your school website. I would look at for your district and find the school that is closest to you or your special education supervisor and call and tell them that you have an up and coming youngster that may be accessing services and you have some questions, and they'll direct you to the right person.
Okay. I think the Department of Ed website also has a link to this contact list, but we'll find it for folks and we'll post it in the comments when we post the recording of this. So we had a question about that.
And TN STEP has staff members across the state, so feel free to get on our website or call us, and we'll help direct you to the right places.
Awesome. Thank you. We also had a question about what's sort of the time that services are available. So just contrast for us, TIS would continue to be available year round, but school services would be available just during the typical school year. Is that correct?
Well, it's an IEP team decision. So school-based services, there could be extended school year. What that's called is ESY. So if your child is eligible and needs to continue some services, they don't mirror what they get all year long, but it could be that they need to continue their speech services or other services and some inclusive opportunities in the summer. So that would be something you would ask, is the team has to address, does my child need extended school year services?
Boom. That's 26 years of experience. Just got the answer for us right there. Thank you. Another question that I have heard um, is the therapist that will be available. How is that determined? Like, you have the IEP team meeting, your child is eligible for, there are goals that include, like for my kids, speech, right? So where I'm used to the therapists that my kids have had for over 2 years now, uh, where are these new therapists coming from? What's that like? If we were to go into the school system, get the IEP, they need speech, how do we get those therapists? What's the scoop?
Rebecca, did you want to jump in there, or do you want me to? Because I
No,
know.
I can start and you
Okay.
finish it. Of course, in my mind right now, I'm like, just the opportunity to make more friends, right? It's an opportunity for your child to work with other people. So what we did is we actually, because we went private and now back public, he is receiving services to the school system during his school day. And they would do that too for a 3-year-old or 4-year-old or 5-year-old. And same thing with the preschool of his public school. But what we noticed is we did not qualify for ESY. And I did not want his services to end. So I contacted the therapist that worked with Part C, right, 0 to 3. And we used our insurance, and he went back and saw his therapist. So your children's speech therapist, our insurance covered. And so Everett's 8, and he's still seeing the same speech therapist he saw at 18 months old. And they have a great relationship. And so it's just more room in your life for other people. But with COVID, we just picked back up on services. So we used to just do it the summer. We were following the school calendar because we were so used to year-round services. But now with COVID, and just he's thriving in it, and has this great relationship with his therapist, that we still do it after school too. So today I've seen our Miss Rebecca, not me, his actual therapist, Miss Rebecca.
Yeah.
So they'll be in the day. Go ahead. Sorry, Karen.
Oh, I was just going to say, the answer to a lot of questions is it depends, because there are 95 counties and over 120 school districts in Tennessee, and everyone does it a little bit differently. So in my county, the physical therapist that worked with my child birth to 3 was the same one that contracted with the school, and she kept physical therapy all through her school career with Maggie. So she's like a part of our family, because physical therapy was always with Maggie. And in other situations, we had to kind of say goodbye to our early intervention speech therapists and others, and use the ones that the school contracted with and the services that they used. But you can always ask for there to be a consultation time where the new therapist could talk to the previous therapist and give some feedback on what worked well and that kind of thing. So make it this continuity so that you don't lose things inadvertently.
Oh my gosh, genius. Thank you. I will be writing that one down. Another beautiful tip that spoiler alert, Karen has already provided to me, because like I said, I am a mom who's going through this, right? And like I've said, Karen, the wealth of experience. So, I'm going to keep tapping into that. My kids have trouble communicating, and a tip that Karen already provided, I want to make sure everyone hears, is the school can do something like a communication log, right? Can you share a little bit about that, Karen?
Right. So it's a home and school communication log that can be written as into the IEP. And you as a mom would write, how your children did that morning, or if there's anything unusual that happened. Maybe that for my daughter, it was if she had seizures in the night, they might want to know to go a little easy in the morning. But the school could also write back what she did during the day and what they're focusing on this week. And so I could reinforce what she's learning at school at home. So any kind of behavior things, academics, social words that she was learning, new signs that she was learning. So any working out some way to communicate between home and school, because most kids are not going to come home when you say, "What'd you do at school today?" You know the answer you're going to get, if they can even tell you, is nothing, or "How was it?" "It was fine." So this communication log lets you learn some things that, you know, uh, past those kind of things.
I know. I love that. That one is in my notes too, because like you talked about, like you've both talked about, it's scary making a transition, and it's been really great to have services in the home so I can learn and reinforce. And so tips like that about how the parent will be included if the child goes to pre-K is helpful for me, allaying my fears. Thank you.
We still have those notebooks that come back and forth every week too. We've not stopped. And that was something that I just start every year, and I can refer back to it. And if I feel like I'm not getting enough, I can ask a question or include something from home, or we're having a hard time with zippers. What can I mean, every week it's just like almost like signing a report card. Like you're just used to getting out of your kid's backpack now. So
Sarah, I did see a question in our chat box if TN Step provided advocacy and training for parents who are in TEIS birth to 3, and our services are birth through age 26. So along the whole spectrum, if we meet you and get to know you and help you, we'll probably be getting a graduation invitation when your child leaves high school. Um, so we're with you from birth through 26 to help in any transition along the way.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Another thing I just want to make sure we break down is we've thrown around acronyms, and Rebecca, I'm guessing you still haven't kept that paper towel. You'd have more than one. Yeah, there we go. But for folks who are still building their encyclopedia here, just want to make sure we say it again. Federal money comes to the state of Tennessee because of your children's right to IDEA, right? And Karen, can you break down IDEA, Part B, Part C for us?
Yeah, right. So it's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that's the federal law that gives protections to kids with disabilities. Part C is the part that serves birth to 3, and then Part B is 3 through 21.
Awesome. And just another question, the educational goals. So one thing we've heard, starting to dig into what TIS extended option would look like. I know that because there are federal requirements that kids between 3 and 5, right, need to be working on literacy and numeracy, that's something that will be a requirement if your kids stay in TIS or go to the school system. Can you tell us about that?
I think that in either situation with early childhood and TEIS, what's developmentally appropriate for your child in the areas of numeracy and literacy, some goals would be written and they would be working on that. In the preschool setting, there may be some more things around where they start doing some science explorations at that level, and literacy and numeracy and all of that as well. So you're going to get some academics whichever way you go, and the ones in the preschool are going to be based on a preschool curriculum, so they are going to follow a specific guided curriculum. And for TEIS, really it's going to be more individualized to your child and where are they developmentally in those areas and what are they ready to learn.
Right, right. But like you said, either way, the plan IFSB, IEP starts with I. It's going to be individualized either way we go.
Exactly.
Thank you. Well, I think that's the top questions that we've gotten today. Although, as Karen has said, TN Step is here, a phone call or an email away if folks have more questions. But Rebecca, Karen, anything else you want to share?
I did want to mention that the Tennessee DIDD, the Department of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, who is the organization or the the Tennessee government office that is implementing TEIS, right, has a great website with resources for families as well. They have a guide called What Families Should Know about TEIS extended options. So it's tn.gov/DIDD. And they have a wealth of information, and they're adding to it daily. They have some family drop-in calls that you can, gather that information. As Sarah and Rebecca were talking about research and listening and learning, they have those archived if you miss them, and there'll be more information added. We are doing a family guide in partnership with some other organizations. So just stay tuned, and we'll roll out as much information as we get our hands on to make sure that everyone has as much information as they can to make informed decisions.
You're amazing. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Rebecca. It's really been helpful to me, and I hope to some more families who've joined us today to
We're
chat
looking
about
forward to seeing what you choose, Sarah.
it. I've got a little bit of time.
She's like, me
A
too,
little
me
bit
too.
of time.
Exactly, Rebecca. Yeah, our eval is scheduled, but it's for next month. So don't worry, I'll be calling. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. So thanks for being with us. More later.
Bye.
Bye.